Paradise Lost. By John Milton. Book 11. The Argument. The Son of God presents to his Father the prayers of our first parents now repenting, and intercedes for them. God accepts them, but declares that they must no longer abide in paradise. Sends Michael with a band of cherubim to dispossess them. But first to reveal to Adam future things, Michael's coming down. Adam shows to Eve certain ominous signs, he discerns Michael's approach. Goes out to meet him, the angel denounces their departure. Eve's lamentation. Adam pleads, but submits. The angel leads him up to a high hill, sets before him in vision what shall happen till the flood. Thus they in lowliest plight repentant stood, praying, for from the mercy seat above, prevenient grace descending had removed the stony from their hearts, and made new flesh. Regenerate grow instead, that sighs now breathed, unutterable, which the spirit of prayer inspired, and winged for heaven with speedier flight than loudest oratory, yet thir port, not of mean suitors, nor important less, seemed thir petition, than when the ancient bare. In fables old, less ancient yet than these, Deucalion and chaste Pierre to restore the race of mankind drowned, before the shrine of Themis stood devout. To heaven their prayers flew up, nor missed the way, by envious winds. Blow in vagabond or frustrate, in they passed, dimensionless through heavenly doors, then clad with incense, where the golden altar fumed. By thir great intercessor, came in sight, before the Father's throne, them the glad Son, presenting, thus to intercede began. See, Father, what first fruits on earth are sprung from thy implanted grace in man, these sighs and prayers, which in this golden censer, mixed with incense, I thy priest before thee bring. Fruits of more pleasing savour from thy seed, sown with contrition in his heart, than those which his own hand manuring all the trees of paradise could have product, ere fallen from innocence. Now therefore bend thine ear to supplication, hear his sighs though mute. Unskilful with what words to pray, let me interpret for him, me his advocate and propitiation, all his works on me, good or not good in graft, my merit those shall perfect, and for these my death shall pay. Accept me, and in me from these receive the smell of peace toward mankind, let him live before thee reconciled, at least his days numbered, though sad, till death, his doom, which I to mitigate thus plead, not to reverse. To better life shall yield him, wherewith me all my redeemed made well in joy and bliss, made one with me as I with thee am one. To whom the Father, without cloud, serene, all thy request for man, accepted Son, obtain, all thy request was my decree, but longer in that paradise to dwell. The law I gave to nature him forbids, those pure immortal elements that know no gross, no unharmonious mixture fool. Eject him tainted now, and purge him off as a distemper, gross to air as gross, and mortal food, as may dispose him best. For dissolution wrought by sin, that first distempered all things, and of incorrupt corrupted, I at first with two fair gifts created him endowed with happiness and immortality, that fondly lost. This other served but to eternize woe, till I provided death, so death becomes his final remedy, and afterlife, tried in sharp tribulation, and refined by faith and faithful works, to second life, waked in the renovation of the just, resigns him up with heaven and earth renewed. But let us call to synod all the blessed, through heaven's wide bounds, from them I will not hide my judgments, how with mankind I proceed, as how with peccant angels late they saw and in thir state, though firm, stood more confirmed. He ended, and the sun gave signal high. To the bright minister that watched, he blew his trumpet, heard in orib since perhaps, when God descended, and perhaps once more, to sound a general doom, angelic blast, filled all the regions, from thir blissful boughs of amaranthine shade, fountain or spring, by the waters of life, where'er they sate, in fellowships of joy, the sons of light hasted, resorting to the summons high, and took their seats, till from his throne supreme, Almighty thus pronounced his sovereign will. O sons, like one of us man is become, to know both good and evil, since his taste of that defended fruit, but let him boast, his knowledge of good lost, and evil got. Happier, had sufficed him to have known good by itself, and evil not at all. He sorrows now, repents, and prayers contrite. My motions in him, longer than they move. His heart I know, how variable and vain. Self left. Least therefore his now bolder hand reach also of the tree of life, and eat. And live forever, dream at least to live. Forever, to remove him I decree. And send him from the garden forth to till the ground whence he was taken, fitter soiler. Michael, this my behest have thou in charge. Take to thee from among the cherubim thy choice of flaming warriors, lest the fiend, or in behalf of man, or to invade vacant possession some new trouble raise. Cast thee, and from the paradise of God, without remorse strive out the sinful bear. From hallowed ground unholy, and denounce to them and to their progeny from thence perpetual banishment. Yet least they faint at the sad sentence rigorously urged. For I behold them softened and with tears bewailing their excess, all terror hide. If patiently thy bidding they obey, dismiss them not disconsolate, reveal to Adam what shall come in future days. As I shall thee enlighten, intermix my covenant in the woman's seed renewed. So send them forth, though sorrowing, yet in peace. And on the east side of the garden place, where entrance up from Eden easiest climbs, cherubic watch, and of a sword the flame, wide waving, all approach far off to fright, and guard all passage to the tree of life, least paradise a receptacle prove to spirits fool, and all my trees their prey, with whose stolen fruit man once more to delude he sailed, and archangelic power prepared for swift descent, with him the cohort bright of watchful cherubim, 4 faces each, had, like a double Janus, all their shape, spangled with eyes more numerous than those of Argus, and more wakeful than to Druze, charmed with Arcadian pipe, the pastoral reed of Hermes, or his opiate rod. Meanwhile, to resalute the world with sacred light, Leucothea whacked, and with fresh dews embalmed the earth, when Adam and first matron Eve had ended now their orisons, and found strength added from above, new hope to spring out of despair, joy, but with fear yet linked, which thus to Eve his welcome words renewed. Eve, easily may faith admit, that all the good which we enjoy, from heaven descends, but that from us ought should ascend to heaven, so prevalent as to concern the mind of God high blessed, or to incline his will. Hard to belief may seem, yet this will prayer, or one short sigh of humane breath, upborne even to the seat of God. For since I sought by prayer offended deity to appease, kneeled and before him humbled all my heart, methought I saw him placable and mild, bending his ear, persuasion in me grew, that I was heard with favor, peace returned home to my breast, and to my memory his promise, that thy seed shall bruise our foe, which then not minded in dismay, yet now assures me that the bitterness of death is past, and we shall live. Whence highly to thee, Eve rightly called, mother of all mankind, mother of all things living, since by thee man is to live, and all things live for man. To whom thus Eve with sad demeanor meek, ill-worthy I such title should belong. To me transgressor, who for thee ordained a help, became thy snare, to me reproach rather belongs, distrust and all dispraise. But infinite in pardon was my judge, that I who first brought death on all, am cracked. The source of life, next favourable thou, who highly thus to entitle me vouchsafest treat, father name deserving, but the field to labour calls us now with sweat imposed. Though after sleepless night, foresee the morn, all unconcerned with our unrest, begins her rosy progress smiling, let us forth. I never from thy side henceforth to stray, where our day's work lies, though now enjoined laborious, till day droop, while here we dwell. What can be toilsome in these pleasant walks? Here let us live, though in fallen state, content. So spake, so wished much humbled Eve, but fate subscribed not, nature first gave signs, impressed on bird, beast, air suddenly eclipsed after short blush of morn, nigh in her sight. The bird of Jove stooped from his eyrie tour. Two birds of gayest plume before him drove down from a hill the beast that reigns in woods. First hunter then pursued a gentle brace, goodliest of all the forest, hart and hind. Direct to eastern gate was bent their flight. Adam observed, and with his eye the chase pursuing, not unmoved, to Eve thus spake. O Eve, some further change awaits us nigh, which heaven by these mute signs in nature shows, forerunners of his purpose, or to warn us haply to secure of our discharge from penalty, because from death released. Some days, how long, and what till then our life? Who knows, or more than this, that we are dust, and thither must return and be no more? Why else this double object in our sight, of flight pursued in the air and o'er the ground? One way the self-same hour, why in the east darkness ere day's mid-course, and morning light more orient in yon western cloud that draws o'er the blue firmament a radiant white, and slow descends, with something heavenly fraught. He erred not, for by this the heavenly bands down from a ski of jasper lighted now in paradise, and on a hill made out a glorious apparition, had not doubt and carnal fear that day dimmed Adam's eye. Not that more glorious, when the angels met Jacob in Manaheim, where he saw the field pavilioned with his guardians bright, nor that which on the flaming mount appeared in Dothan, covered with a camp of fire, against the Syrian king, who to surprise one man, assassin-like had levied war unproclaimed, the princely hierarch in thir bright stand, there left his powers to size possession of the garden, he alone to find where Adam sheltered, took his way, not unperceived of Adam, who to Eve, while the great visitant approached, thus spake. Eve, now expect great tidings, which perhaps of us will soon determine, or impose new laws to be observed, for I descry from yonder blazing cloud that veils the hill one of the heavenly host, and by his gate none of the meanest, some great potentate, or of the thrones above, such majesty invests him coming, yet not terrible, that I should fear, nor sociably mild as Raphael, that I should much confide, but solemn and sublime, whom not to offend with reverence I must meet, and thou retire. He ended, and Archangel soon drew nigh, not in his shape celestial, but as man, clad to meet man, over his lucid arms. A military vest of purple flowered. Livelier than Melibæan, or the gren of Surrey, worn by kings and heroes old. In time of truce, Iris had dipped the woof. His starry helm unbuckled showed him prime. In manhood where youth ended, by his side, as in a glistering zodiac hung the sword, Satan's dire dread, and in his hand the spear. Adam bowed low, he kingly from his state inclined not, but his coming thus declared. Adam, heaven's high behest no preface needs. Sufficient that thy prayers are heard, and death then due by sentence when thou didst transgress. Defeated of his seizure many days, given thee of grace, wherein thou mayst repent, and one bad act with many deeds well done mayst cover, well may then thy Lord appeased redeem thee quite from death's rapacious claimy. But longer in this paradise to dwell permits not, to remove thee I am come, and send thee from the garden forth to till the ground whence thou wast ta'en, fitter soiler. He added not, for Adam at the news, heart struck with chilling gripe of sorrow stood, that all his senses bound, Eve, who unseen, yet all had heard, with audible lament, discovered soon the place of her retire. O unexpected stroke, worse than of death! Must I thus leave thee paradise? Thus leave thee native soiler, these happy walks and shades, fit haunt of gods, where I had hoped to spend, quiet though sad, the respite of that day, that must be mortal to us both, O flowers, that never will in other climate grow, my early visitation, and my last, at even, which I bred up with tender hand, from the first opening bud, and gave ye names, who now shall rear ye to the sun, or rank your tribes, and water from the ambrosial fount? Thee lastly nuptial bore, by me adorned, with what to sight or smell was sweet, from thee how shall I part, and whither wander down into a lower world, to this obscure and wild? How shall we breath in other air, less pure, accustomed to immortal fruits? Whom thus the angel interrupted Mela. Lament not Eve, but patiently resign what justly thou hast lost, nor set thy heart thus overfond on that which is not thine. Thy going is not lonely, with thee goes thy husband, him to follow thou art bound. Where he abides, think there thy native soiler. Adam by this from the cold sudden damp recovering, and his scattered spirits returned. To Michael thus his humble words addressed. Celestial, whether among the thrones, or armed, of them the highest, for such of shape may seem, Prince above princes, gently hast thou tooled thy message, which might else in telling wound, and in performing end us, what besides of sorrow and dejection and despair our frailty can sustain, thy tidings bring. Departure from this happy place, our sweet recess, and only consolation left, familiar to our eyes, all places else inhospitable appear and desolate, nor knowing us nor known, and if by prayer incessant I could hope to change the will of him who all things can, I would not cease to weary him with my assiduous cries. But prayer against his absolute decree no more avails than breath against the winder, blown stifling back on him that breaths it forth. Therefore to his great bidding I submit. This most afflicts me, that departing hence, as from his face I shall be hid, depraved, his blessed countenance, here I could frequent with worship, place by place where he vouchsafed presence divine, and to my sons relate. On this mount he appeared, under this tree stood visible, among these pines his voice I heard, here with him at this fountain talked. So many grateful altars I would rear, of grassy turf, and pile up every stone of lustre from the brook, in memoriae, or monument to ages, and thereon offer sweet-smelling gums and fruits and flowers. In yonder netherworld where shall I seek his bright appearances, or footstep trace? For though I fled him angry, yet recalled to life prolonged and promised race, I now gladly behold though but his utmost skirts of glory, and far off his steps adore. To whom thus Michael with regard benigne: Adam, thou know'st heaven his, and all the earth. Not this rock only, his omnipresence fills land, sea, and air, and every kind that lives. Fermented by his virtual power and warmed, all earth he gave thee to possess and rule. No despicable gift, surmise not then his presence to these narrow bounds confined. Of paradise or Eden, this had been perhaps thy capital seat, from whence had spread all generations, and had hither come from all the ends of earth, to celebrate and reverence thee, thir great progenitor. But this preeminence thou hast lost, brought down to dwell on even ground now with thy sons. Yet doubt not but in valley and in plain, God is as here, and will be found alike present, and of his presence many a signe, still following thee, still compassing thee round with goodness and paternal love, his face express, and of his steps the track divine, which that thou mayst believe, and be confirmed. Ere thou from hence depart, know I am sent to show thee what shall come in future days. To thee and to thy offspring, good with bad, expect to hear supernal grace contending with sinfulness of men, thereby to learn true patience, and to temper joy with fear, and pious sorrow, equally inured by moderation either state to bear. Prosperous or adverse, so shalt thou lead safest thy life, and best prepared endure thy mortal passage when it comes. Ascend this hill, let Eve, for I have drenched her eyes, here sleep below while thou to foresight wakes treat, as once thou slepst, while she to life was formed. To whom thus Adam gratefully replied: Ascend, I follow thee, safe guide, the path thou ledst me, and to the hand of heaven submit. However chastening, to the evil tourney, my obvious breast, arming to overcome by suffering, and earn rest from labor won. If so I may attain, so both ascend. In the visions of God, it was a hill of paradise the highest, from whose top the hemisphere of earth in clearest ken stretched out to amplest reach of prospect lay. Not higher that hill nor wider looking round, whereon for different cause the tempter set our second Adam in the wilderness, to show him all earth's kingdoms and their glory. His eye might there command wherever stood city of old or modern fame, the seat of mightiest empire, from the destined walls of Cambalu, seat of Cathay and Can, and Samarcand by Oxus, Temir's throne, to Paquin of Sinian kings, and thence to Agra and Lahore of great Mughal, down to the golden Chersonese, or where the Persian Inikbatan sate, or since in Hispahan, or where the Russian Khazar in Moscow, or the Sultan in Byzance, Turkestan born, nor could his eye not ken empire of Negus to his utmost port, Akoko and the less maritime kings, Mombasa, and Quiloa, and Merlind. And so Fala thought Hofia, to the real me of Congo, and Angola furthest south, or thence from Niger flood to Atlas Mount, the kingdoms of Almansor, Fez, and Sus, Morocco and Algiers, and Trebizond. On Europe thence, and where Rome was to sway the world, in spirit perhaps he also saw rich Mexico the seat of Moctezuma, and Cusco in Peru, the richer seat of Atabar Lipa, and yet unspoiled Guyana, whose great city Gerion's sons call El Dorado, but to nobler sights Michael from Adam's eyes the film removed, which that false fruit that promised clearer sight had bred, then purged with euphrasia and rue the visual nerve, for he had much to see. And from the well of life 3 drops instilled. So deep the power of these ingredients pierced, even to the inmost seat of mental sight, that Adam now enforced to close his eyes, sunk down and all his spirits became entranced. But him the gentle angel by the hand soon raised, and his attention thus recalled. Adam, now ope thine eyes, and first behold effects which thy original crime hath wrought, in some to spring from thee, who never touched accepted tree, nor with the snake and spit, nor shinned thy sin, yet from that sin derive corruption to bring forth more violent deeds. His eyes he opened, and beheld a field, part arable and tilth, whereon were sheaves new reaped, the other part sheep walks and folds. Midst an altar as the landmark stood, rustic, of grassy sword, thither anon a sweaty reaper from his tillage brought first fruits, the green ear, and the yellow sheaf, unculled, as came to hand, a shepherd next more meek came with the firstlings of his flock, choicest and best, then sacrificing, laid the inwards and thir fat, with incense strewed on the cleft wood, and all due rites performed. His offering soon propitious fire from heaven consumed with nimble glance, and grateful steam. The others not, for his was not sincere. Whereat he inly ragged, and as they talked, smote him into the midriff with a stone that beat out life. He fell, and deadly pale groaned out his soul with gushing blood diffused. Much at that sight was Adam in his heart dismayed, and thus in haste to the angel cried, O teacher, some great mischief hath befallen to that meek man, who well had sacrificed his piety thus and pure devotion paid. Whom Michael thus, he also moved, replied, These two are brethren, Adam, and to come out of thy loins, the unjust the just hath slain, for envy that his brother's offering found from heaven acceptance, but the bloody fact will be avenged, and the other's faith approved. Loose no reward, though here thou see him die, rolling in dust and gore, to which our sire, alas, both for the deed and for the cause. But have I now seen death? Is this the way? I must return to native dust, a sight of terror, foul and ugly to behold. Horrid to think, how horrible to feel. To whom thus Michael, death thou hast seen in his first shape on man, but many shapes of death, and many are the ways that lead to his grim cave, all dismal, yet to sense more terrible at entrance than within. Some, as thou saw'st treat, by violent stroke shall die, by fire, flood, famine, by intemperance more, in meats and drinks, which on the earth shall bring diseases dire, of which a monstrous crew before thee shall appear, that thou mayst know what misery the inabstinence of Eve shall bring on men. Immediately a place before his eyes appeared, sad, noisome, dark, a lazar house it seemed, wherein were laid numbers of all diseased, all maladies, of ghastly spasm, or racking torture, qualms, of heart-sick agony, all feverous kinds, convulsions, epilepsies, fierce catarrhs, intestine stone and ulcer, colic bangs, demoniac frenzy, moping melancholy, and moon-struck madness, pining atrophy, marasmus and wide-wasting pestilence, dropsies, and asthmas, and joint-racking rheums. Dire was the tossing, deep the groans, despair tended the sick busiest from couch to couch, and over them triumphant death his dart shook, but delayed to strike, though oft invoked with vows, as their chief good, and final hope. Sight so deform what heart of rock could long dree aid behold? Adam could not, but wept. Though not of woman born, compassion quelled his best of man, and gave him up to tears. A space, till firmer thoughts restrained excess, and scarce recovering words his plaint renewed. O miserable mankind, to what fall? Degraded, to what wretched state reserved? Better end here unborn. Why is life given? To be thus wrested from us? Rather why? Obtruded on us thus? Who if we knew what we receive, would either not accept life offered, or soon beg to lay it down? Glad to be so dismissed in peace, can thus image of God in man created once, so goodly and erect, though faulty since, to such unsightly sufferings be debased, under inhuman pains? Why should not man, retaining still divine similitude, in part, from such deformities be free, and for his Maker's image sake exempt? Their Maker's image, answered Michael, then forsook them, when themselves they vilified, to serve ungoverned appetite, and took his image whom they served, a brutish vice, inductive mainly to the sin of Eve. Therefore so abject is their punishment, disfiguring not God's likeness, but thine, or if his likeness, by themselves defact, while they pervert pure nature's healthful rules, to loathsome sickness, worthily, since they God's image did not reverence in themselves. I yield it just, said Adam, and submit. But is there yet no other way, besides these painful passages, how we may come to death, and mix with our connatural dust? There is, said Michael, if thou well observe the rule of not too much, by temperance taught, in what thou eat'st and drink'st, seeking from thence due nourishment, not gluttonous delight, till many years over thy head return. So mayst thou live, till like ripe fruit thou drop into thy mother's lap, or be with these gathered, not harshly plucked, for death mature. This is old age, but then thou must outlive thy youth, thy strength, thy beauty, which will change to withered weakened grey, thy senses then obtuse, all taste of pleasure must forego to what thou hast, and for the air of youth, hopeful and cheerful, in thy blood will reign a melancholy damp of cold and dry, to weigh thy spirits down, and last consume the balm of life, to whom our ancestor henceforth I fly not death, nor would prolong life much, bent rather how I may be quit fairest and easiest of this cumbrous charge, which I must keep till my appointed day of rendering up, and patiently attend my dissolution. Michael replied, nor love thy life, nor hate, but what thou livest. Live well, how long or short permit to heaven. And now prepare thee for another sight. He looked and saw a spacious plain, whereon were tents of various hue, by some were herds of cattle grazing, others, whence the sound of instruments that made melodious chime was heard, of harp and organ, and who moved thir stops and chords was seen, his volant touch, instinct through all proportions low and high, fled and pursued transverse the resonant fugue. In other part stood one who at the forge, laboring, two massy clods of iron and brass had melted, whether found where casual fire had wasted woods on mountain or in vale, down to the veins of earth, thence gliding hot to some cave's mouth, or whether washed by stream from underground, the liquid ore he drined into fit moulds prepared, from which he formed first his own tools, then what might else be wrought, fusel or graven in metal, after these, but on the heather side a different sort, from the high neighboring hills, which was thir seat, down to the plain descended, by thir guise. Just men they seemed, and all thir study bent to worship God aright, and know his works. Not hid, nor those things lust which might preserve freedom and peace to men, they on the plain long had not walked, when from the tents behold a bevy of fair women, richly gay, in gems and wanton dress, to the harp they sung soft amorous ditties, and in dance came on. The men though grave, aid them, and let their eyes rove without rein, till in the amorous net fast caught, they licked and each his liking chose. And now of love they treat till th' evening star love's harbinger appeared, then all in heat they light the nuptial torch, and bid invoke Hymen, then first to marriage rites invoked. With feast and music all the tents resound. Such happy interview and fair event of love and youth not lost, songs, garlands, flowers, and charming symphonies attached the heart of Adam, soon inclined to admit delight. The bent of nature, which he thus expressed true opener of mine eyes, prime angel blessed. Much better seems this vision, and more hope of peaceful days portents, than those two past. Those were of hate and death, or pain much worse. Here nature seems fulfilled in all her ends. To whom thus Michael, judge not what is best by pleasure, though to nature seeming meet. Created, as thou art, to nobler end. Holy and pure, conformity divine. Those tents thou saw'st so pleasant, were the tents of wickedness, wherein shall dwell his race. Who slew his brother, studious they apper of arts that polish life, inventors rare, unmindful of their maker, though his spirit taught them, but they his gifts acknowledged none. Yet their beauteous offspring shall beget. For that fair female troop thou saw'st, that seemed of goddesses, so blithe, so smooth, so gay, yet empty of all good wherein consists woman's domestic honor and chief praise, bred only and completed to the taste of lustful appetence, to sing, to dance, to dress, and trule the tongue, and rule the eye. To these that sober race of men, whose lives religious titled them the sons of God, shall yield up all their virtue, all their fame, ignobly, to the trains and to the smiles of these fair atheists, and now swim in joy, ere long to swim at large, and laugh, for which the world ere long a world of tears must weep. To whom thus Adam of short joy bereft, O pity and shame, that they who to live well entered so fair, should turn aside to tread paths indirect, or in the midway faint. But still I see the tenor of man's woe holds on the same, from woman to begin. From man's effeminate slackness it begins. Said Th Angel, who should better hold his place by wisdom, and superior gifts received. But now prepare thee for another scene. He looked and saw wide territories spread before him, towns, and rural works between. Cities of men with lofty gates and toes, conquerors in arms, fierce faces threatening war, giants of mighty bone, and bold emprise, part wield arms, part curb the foaming steed, single or in array of battle ranged, both horse and foot, nor idly mustering stood. One way a band select from foraged drives, a herd of beeves, fair oxen and fair kine, from a fat meadow ground, or fleecy flock, ewes and their bleating lambs over the plain. Their booty, scarce with life the shepherds fly, but call in aid, which makes a bloody fray. With cruel tournament the squadrons join, where cattle pastured late, now scattered lies, with carcasses and arms then sanguined field, deserted, others to a city strong lay siege, encamped, by battery, scale, and mine, assaulting, others from the wall defend, with dart and javelin, stones and sulphurous fire, on each hand slaughter and gigantic deeds. In other part the sceptred heralds call to counsel in the city gates, anon. Grey-headed men and grave, with warriors mixed, assemble, and harangues are heard, but soon, in factious opposition, till at last, of middle age one rising, eminent, in wise deport, spake much of right and wrong, of justice, of religion, truth, and peace, and judgment from above, him old and young, exploded, and had seized with violent hands. Had not a cloud descending snatched he him thence, unseen amid the throng, so violence proceeded, and oppression, and sword law. Through all the plain, and refuge none was found. Adam was all in tears, and to his guide, lamenting turned full sad, "Oh, what are these? Death's ministers, not men, who thus steal death inhumanly to men, and multiply 10,000-fold the sin of him who slew his brother, for of whom such massacre make they but of their brethren, men of men? But who was that just man, whom had not heaven rescued, had in his righteousness been lost? To whom thus Michael, these are the product of those ill-mated marriages thou saw'st, where good with bad were matched, who of themselves abhor to join, and by imprudence mixed, produce prodigious births of body or mind. Such were these giants, men of high renown. For in those days might one shall be admired, and valor and heroic virtue called, to overcome in battle, and subdue nations, and bring home spoils with infinite manslaughter, shall be held the highest pitch of human glory, and for glory done, of triumph, to be styled great conquerors, patrons of mankind, gods, and sons of gods, destroyers rightly are called and plagues of men. Thus fame shall be achieved, renown on earth, and what most merits fame in silence hid. But he the seventh from thee, whom thou beheldst, the only righteous in a world perverse, and therefore hated, therefore so beset, with foes for daring single to be just, and utter odious truth, that God would come to judge them with his saints, him the Most High, wrapped in a balmy cloud with winged steeds, did, as thou saw'st, receive, to walk with God, high in salvation and the climes of bliss, exempt from death, to show thee what reward awaits the good, the rest what punishment, which now direct thine eyes and soon behold. He looked and saw the face of things quite changed. The brazen throat of war had ceased to roar. All now was turned to jollity and game, to luxury and riot, feast and dance, marrying or prostituting, as befell, rape or adultery, where passing fair allured them, thence from cups to civil broils. At length a reverend sire among them came, and of thir doings great dislike declared, and testified against thir ways. He oft frequented thir assemblies, where so met triumphs or festivals, and to them preached conversion and repentance, as to souls in prison under judgments imminent. But all in vain, which when he saw, he sayest, contending, and removed his tents far off. Then from the mountain hewing timber tall, began to build a vessel of huge bulk, measured by cubit, length, and breadth, and height, smeared round with pitch, and in the side a door contrived, and of provisions laden large, for man and beast, when lower wonders strange, of every beast, and bird, and insect small, came sevens, and pairs, and entered in, as taught. Third order, last the sire, and his 3 sons, with their 4 wives, and God made fast the door. Meanwhile the south wind rose, and with black wings, wide hovering, all the clouds together drove. From under heaven, the hills to their supply, vapor, and exhalation dusk and moist, sent up amain, and now the thickened ski, like a dark ceiling stood, down rushed the rain, impetuous, and continued till the earth No more was seen, the floating vessel swum, uplifted, and secure with beaked prow. Rode tilting o'er the waves, all dwellings else. Flood overwhelmed, and them with all thir pomp. Deep underwater ruled, sea-covered sea. Sea without shore, and in thir palaces, where luxury lay trained, sea monsters whelped and stabbled, of mankind, so numerous late. All left, in one small bottom swum embarked. How didst thou grieve then, Adam, to behold the end of all thy offspring, end so sad? Depopulation, thee another flood of tears and sorrow afflowed thee also drowned, and sunk thee as thy sons, till gently Rhea, by th angel, on thy feet thou stoodst at last, though comfortless, as when a father mourns his children, all in view destroyed at once. And scarce to th angel utteredst thus thy plaint: O visions ill foreseen, better had I lived ignorant of future, so had borne my part of evil wanly, each day's lot, enough to bear, those now, that were dispensed, the burden of many ages, on me light, at once, by my foreknowledge gaining birth, abortive, to torment me ere thir being, with thought that they must be, let no man seek henceforth to be foretold what shall befall him or his child, and evil he may be sure, which neither his foreknowing can prevent, and he the future evil shall no less in apprehension than in substance feel. Grievous to bear, but that care now is past. Man is not whom to warn, those few escaped. Famine and anguish will at last consume. Wandering that watery desert, I had hope. When violence was ceased, and war on earth, all would have then gone well, peace would have crowned with length of happy days the race of man. But I was far deceived, for now I see peace to corrupt no less than war to waste. How comes it thus? Unfouled, celestial guide. And whether here the race of man will end? To whom thus Michael, those whom last thou saw'st in triumphant luxurious wealth, are they first seen in acts of prowess eminent, and great exploits, but of true virtue void, who having spilt much blood, and done much waste, subduing nations, and achieved thereby fame in the world, high titles, and rich prey, shall change their course to pleasure, ease, and sloth, surfeit, and lust, till wantonness and pride raise out of friendship hostile deeds in peace. The conquered also, and enslaved by war, shall with their freedom lost all virtue lose, and fear of God, from whom their piety feigned, in sharp contest of battle found no aid. Against invaders, therefore cooled in zeal, thenceforth shall practice how to live secure, worldly or dissolute, on what their lords shall leave them to enjoy, for th earth shall bear more than enough, that temperance may be tried. So all shall turn degenerate, all depraved. Justice and temperance, truth and faith forgot. One man except, the only Son of Light. In a dark age, against example good, against allurement, custom, and a world offended, fearless of reproach and scorn, or violence, he of wicked ways shall them admonish, and before them set the paths of righteousness, how much more safe and full of peace, denouncing wrath to come on their impenitence, and shall return of them derided, but of God observed. The one just man alive, by his command, shall build a wondrous ark, as thou beheldst, to save himself and household from amidst a world devote to universal wrack. No sooner he with them of man and beast select for life shall in the ark be lodged, and sheltered round, but all the cataracts of heaven set open on the earth shall power rain day and night, all fountains of the deep broke up, shall heave the ocean to usurp beyond all bounds, till inundation rise. Above the highest hills, then shall this mount of paradise by might of waves be moved. Out of his place, pushed by the horned flood, with all his verdure spoiled, and trees adrift, down the great river to the opening gulf, and there take root an island salt and bare, the haunt of seals and auks, and sea mews clang, to teach thee that God attributes to place no sanctity, if none be thither brought by men who there frequent, or therein dwell. And now what further shall ensue? Behold, he looked, and saw the ark hull on the flood, which now abated, for the clouds were fled, driven by a keen north winder, that blowing dree, wrinkled the face of deluge, as decayed, and the clear sun on his wide watery glass gazed hot, and of the fresh wave largely drew, as after thirst, which made thir flowing shrink, from standing lake to tripping ebb, that stole with soft foot towards the deep, who now had stopped his sluices, as the heaven his windows shut. The ark no more now floats, but seems on ground, fast on the top of some high mountain fixed. And now the tops of hills as rocks appear, with clamour thence the rapid currents drive towards the retreating sea thir furious tide. Forthwith from out the ark a raven flies, and after him, the surer messenger, a dove sent forth once and argent to spy green tree or ground whereon his foot may light. The second time returning, in his bill an olive leaf he brings, pacific signy. Anon dry ground appears, and from his archy the ancient sire descends with all his train. Then with uplifted hands, and eyes devout, grateful to heaven, over his head beholds a dewy cloud, and in the cloud a bow, conspicuous with three listed colours gay, betokening peace from God, and covenant new. Whereat the heart of Adamaist so sad greatly rejoiced he, and thus his joy broke forth. O thou that future things canst represent, as present, heavenly instructor, I revive at this last sight, assured that man shall live with all the creatures, and thir seed preserve. Far less I now lament for one whole world of wicked sons destroyed, than I rejoice for one man found so perfect and so just, that God vouchsafes to raise another world from him, and all his anger to forget. But say, what mean those coloured streaks in heaven, distended as the brow of God appeased? Or serve they as a flowery verge to bind the fluid skirts of that same watery cloud, lest it again dissolve and sure the earth? To whom th archangel, dexterously thou aim'st, so willingly doth God remit his ire, though late repenting him of man depraved. Grieved at his heart, when looking down he saw the whole earth filled with violence, and all flesh corrupting each their way, yet those removed. Such grace shall one just man find in his sight, that he relents not to blot out mankind, and makes a covenant never to destroy the earth again by flood, nor let the sea surpass his bounds, nor rain to drown the world with man therein or beast, but when he brings over the earth a cloud, will therein set his triple-coloured bow, whereon to look, and call to mind his covenant, day and night, seed time and harvest, heat and hoary frost, shall hold their course, till fire purge all things new, both heaven and earth, wherein the just shall dwell. The end of the 11th book. Thank you.